Hey guys, this is Wraith, author of the gay vampire romance Everdark that you are about to listen to, performed by a multi-actor cast. The podcast would not be possible without her Grace Reed studio, which provides the excellent voice talent, and of course, the support of the Wraith Rain members who are subscribers to my site, wraithrain.com, which you will learn about down below and in the podcast. I hope you enjoy how the talented actors bring these vampires and their world of darkness, mystery, and eternal love to life. Now let's get down to it.
Last time on Everdark, Christian chose a second life with Lord Balthazar Ravenscroft as his master, so Julian succeeded in saving his best friend, though he does not know it yet. Everdark, Episode 9, Break of Day. In the cold and the dark, Julian swore he heard humming in his head, a sweet humming in a male voice rather like a lullaby. It wrapped around his mind almost in an embrace. He drew his knees against his chest and tightened his arms around them as he shivered. It was chilly in the lowest level of a parking garage in the abandoned building. The building boom had come to Ravenscross and then busted rather spectacularly, leaving several half-finished high-rises dotting the downtown. It was to the nearest of these from the hospital that he had fled as the sun began to rise. He'd wanted to go home, but he hadn't dared because maybe Balthazar or his acolytes would be waiting for him there. You must hide yourself from the light. Find a place that is black and secure. Curl down there and sleep. You will wake again when the night rains. He didn't know if this was Damon's voice or his own mind figuring out that sunlight was very bad for him now. A sunbeam had passed across his shoulder blades and even through the material of his shirt. He had felt his skin ache.
That's one myth about vampires proven true. Can't be out in sunlight. Check.
He'd run down trash-strewn stairwells to the lowest level of the structure. Concrete floors, ceilings and walls. Dirt surrounding the whole thing. No light. His heart rate had lowered as the darkness seemed to bathe his still twitching skin. Even though there was no light down in the bowels of this underground parking structure, he could still see as if it were bright daylight. He saw too much, actually. His eyes flickered at the slightest of movements. Often it was just a piece of trash stirring in the breeze that had caught his attention. He didn't understand why or how fast food wrappers seemed to inhabit abandoned places. Other times, when a movement caught his attention, it was a rat, whose eyes glowed redly at him, reminding him of bright jewels.
And like Damon's eyes, but they are volcanic red. The red of deep fires in the earth.
He'd shook himself when his thoughts had drifted to Damon once more. His conflicted feelings were an anathema to him, a confounding anathema. He had to handle things on his own. He'd always done so. He didn't need Damon to hold his hand. So he'd found a corner, as far away from the stairs as possible, and hunkered down on a flattened cardboard box. Though the box smelled faintly of liquor, his nose told him that no homeless person had taken to squatting down there, not in a long time anyways. He was alone. He was as safe as he could be right now.
Balthazar has people in the hospital. Humans serving him.
Julian thought.
Who's to say that he doesn't have people in the police department too? Who am I kidding? Of course he does. The cops had talked to me about Mom and Dad likely worked for him. I just hope the Christian's okay. Dr. Stone won't be able to hurt him with all those people around. He's got to be safe until I can get back to him.
With that thought, Julian checked his phone to see when sunset was. Luckily, it was fall, and the sun was setting earlier and earlier every day. He set his alarm for 10 minutes before sunfall. If he actually slept, that would give him time to fully wake up and be on his way back to the hospital the moment darkness fell. He curled up like a cat on the cardboard, trying to get comfortable, feeling like he never would. The strength that had coursed through his limbs was draining away as the sun rose, but he was still awake, still vibrating with all that had happened.
Vampires are real. I am becoming one of them, but I will die before the transformation is complete. Vampires are real.
That was the first line of the video he'd made just a few hours ago. Thinking of the video had him rocketing upwards. He had to stop it from playing. He still wanted to expose vampires, but that desire was tempered now as the only way to save Christian was for him to become one. Outing vampires would out Christian and put his friend in great danger. He quickly accessed the back of their site and turned off the timed autopost. If Christian wanted to expose them after things were sorted, that would be his best friend's prerogative.
I'll be dead, so it won't matter either way for me. Unless there's something after this life.
Julian mused darkly.
Maybe Mom and Dad are in some alternate plane of existence, waiting for me. I wonder if it'll hurt when I die. Damon didn't say exactly, but I think it's gonna hurt.
He laid back down again. He dreamed of discovering his parents' killers for so long, about having proof of one of the fantastic things that they had believed in. But never had he considered it would end like this, with his being a vampire, Christian being a vampire, and him waking a sleeping vampire king. And, of course, never before was he so attuned to his mortality. He and Christian had been in life and death situations before, but always these times had been brief and terrifying. This waiting to die business, watching the clock hands shear away the moments of his life, was worse than he'd imagined it would be. And here he was, in the dark, in the cold, all alone, and knowing he was going to die very, very soon. He squeezed his eyes tight, hoping no tears fell. He was determined not to feel sorry for himself. He'd lived his life as if every day had mattered. He'd been extraordinarily lucky in having a best friend like Christian, and the love of Christian's parents after his own were gone. And though they had been stolen from him too soon, he'd had his own parents for 12 glorious years. His life had been good, and giving it up for Christian was the way he'd want to go. He just wanted a little longer, just a little longer, or a lot longer, but that wasn't to be. He wished for a crazy moment that he and Christian could be vampires together. It would be the ultimate adventure in some ways. They'd have eons of time to explore and learn. They'd be there to see the most amazing discoveries. They'd have the ability to truly know subjects down to their bones. If only. He wrapped his arms around his calves and rocked. That was when the humming in his head had started. Like the voice that had told him to seek darkness, he wasn't sure if this humming, this lullaby, was real. There were no words, and when he reached for the sound mentally, it retreated like a startled animal. So he just sat there in his mind, and the music had come back. It drew him like a crooked finger into sleep. He drifted into the darkness and then fell into full sleep with amazing quickness for him. Normally, insomnia plagued him, but not that time. He started to dream, almost immediately, of Nightfallen. He was gliding through its night-shrouded streets. The twin moons that never seemed to move in the night sky poured their healing light upon him. It almost felt like his feet were not touching the ground as he moved through the city, as if he knew it like the back of his hand. He passed from a wide boulevard into another magnificent square. At the far end of the square sat a palace. Palace was the only way to describe the structure he was approaching. Like the rest of the city, it was made from that same beautiful pale stone, but, like Damon's tomb, it was accented with gold. There was a huge golden dome rising from a jutting circular front section of the building. There were 2 huge doors, twice his height, also made of gold with elaborate leaf and vine designs embossed into the surface. The doors that had remained closed to him in real life opened to him now effortlessly. Julian's heart hammered, and he held his breath as the doors swung inwards noiselessly. He was going to see what was inside this magnificent place. Or, at least, he was going to dream he was. He was not disappointed. The doors opened into a soaring rotunda. A mosaic done in black and white marble of a giant infinity symbol graced the floor. Overhead was the interior of the incredible golden dome. Scenes of men and women riding horned horses after strange and terrible creatures with slavering fangs through endless woods were embossed on the dome's outer edge. It was a hunt, but not a human one. He wanted to look more closely at the walls, where more carvings, graceful and alien, populated the walls. But he found himself heading instead towards another flight of stairs, one of two in the rotunda that curled arm-like around another set of double doors. These arched doors, Julian guessed, might lead into a throne room. But he was already up the stairs and striding down a long hallway before he could think to open them to see. He guessed that his destination was at the end of the long hallway, where another set of double doors stood. Etched upon them was another infinity symbol. There was a blood-red runner laced with golden thread on the floor. There were portraits, done in what looked like oil paint on the walls, but he did not look long enough at any of them for him to see if their features looked like anyone he knew of, or if his mind had just created a series of daemons. Like the other doors had, the doors at the end of the hallway opened of their own accord. The room was vast, one open space with no walls to divide it up. From the doors, his gaze swept over the space. He immediately recognized it as being a bedroom. There was a bed big enough for 6 people to sleep in. It was layered with silk sheets, thick velvet comforters in dark blues and purples, and fur blankets with strange markings on top of that. Plump pillows, also in silk, were piled high against a rich wooden headboard. Black, heavy curtains were tied around the posts on each corner. No coffins for these vampires.
I'm dreaming of a plush bedroom because I'm sleeping on a cardboard box,
Julian thought mirthlessly. He stopped moving in the dream. There was this sense of watchfulness in his attitude, as if he thought he heard something but wasn't sure and was listening very carefully. Julian frowned. Had he heard something? No, he didn't think so. He started moving again, going over to what was clearly a dressing area. There were several thrown-open wardrobes stuffed with clothing, as well as more clothes that were thrown almost carelessly over the backs of low plush chairs. But these clothes were nothing like what Julian wore, where he favored jeans, cargo pants, Henleys, and hoodies, all in breathable cotton. These clothes were made of silk, velvet, and leather. A lot of leather. He saw boots, too, from low calf to mid-thigh, all made of leather or suede. No set of Timberlands in sight.
Definitely not my style.
He thought this just as he was in the middle of sliding on what were very supple black leather pants. Again he stilled in the dream and listened carefully. This listening session was longer than the other, but finally he went back to dressing in an outfit he wouldn't be caught dead in. He pulled a black silk shirt on next, that just wrapped along his torso and tied at his waist. He felt like he was wearing water because it was so cool and slick against his skin. Black knee-high leather boots were next. They fit perfectly on his feet without any pinching or rubbing. And finally, to top things off, he put on an ankle-length leather coat with a high collar. It drew in at his waist and then flared out around his legs with a slit in the back.
Black, black, and more black. Black is the new black, I guess.
He stilled again, but this time a voice that was not his own asked, "Julian?"
Everdark is a completed story, but that's not the end of this world. The sequel to Everdark is called Everdark Academy, and it's just as large, if not larger, than the original Everdark. Like Everdark, it's a serial story, written and posted one chapter at a time, with me reading and responding to comments. If you want to read the sequel to Everdark, you can join the site and read at least 70 chapters. That's 280,000 words, if not more.
Julian froze.
Damon?
That was when he realized that he wasn't dreaming. He was seeing through Damon's eyes. The vampire king was in Everdark, likely in his own bedroom in his palace. The clothes, the incredible bed, the gold and marble everywhere made complete sense now. Julian was dazed with wonder that he was able to see through Damon's eyes during a dream. He'd felt slightly disconnected from his body in the dream, but he'd believed it was just a dream, so it hadn't really bothered him. But now he understood why. This wasn't his body. He was just traveling along with it. Damon sank down into one of the chairs as if his legs could no longer hold him. He was quiet, staring out of the set of nearest French doors to a balcony bathed in moonlight. Julian remembered the tossed clothes on that chair and felt a bit puckish.
You should maybe clean up the place. I guess there are no servants there to iron your stuff.
Julian joked weakly. When I went to sleep, all left Nightfallen. Only a few of the immortals were to return to see that I was fed, Damon explained almost absently, as if he couldn't believe they were speaking.
How long ago was that?
Millennia.
Millennia? You're kidding.
No.
Did you mean to sleep that long? Or did your followers just abandon you to sleep forever?
Julian couldn't help with the questions. He was a natural seeker of knowledge, and some part of him was fascinated with Damon. I was supposed to be woken when... The timing was fanciful, but I was certain that my people would wake me before now, Damon admitted, a touch of unease threading through his voice. I do not hear their minds. I see no evidence that they have been here in a very long time.
Maybe they died.
Damon let out a low snort. They are called immortals for a reason, Julian.
Yeah, but you killed those other immortal vampires.
Julian pointed out. The thing was that Damon was not like those other vampires. While Julian had still been able to see the humanity in the other vampires, he felt that Damon had never been human somehow. It was a simple difference. But Damon's red eyes, as opposed to the silver eyes of the other vampires, seemed a clear differentiator to him. They are our children, not us. Damon confirmed that the vampires and the immortals were different. Damon rubbed his hands over his pants as he spoke, as if the material soothed him somehow.
What's with all the leather? I mean, leather pants are sort of the stuff you see in bad porn.
The joke fell flat, as Julian remembered Damon's body, and especially those long, muscular legs. The thought of those legs sheathed in soft, supple leather wasn't funny at all. I like the feel of it, Damon defended himself. Leather and silk and velvet. Clothes are a sensual pleasure. Yours looked utilitarian. I hope that this is not the style of your time for males.
Utilitarian? Actually, I guess that's fair. That's what I wear when investigating secret vampire cities where you need to run your ass off.
Julian found himself unable to say more as he thought of Christian in Celine's clutches. The gun he'd lost somewhere in Everdark. Not that it would have been all that useful, he knew now. How are you? How are you feeling? Damon's voice was stilted and somewhat disjointed as he asked this. Julian realized that it was shock. Damon was shocked that they were speaking again.
Why are you freaked out that we're talking?
Had Damon thought he would be dead already? A cold dread filled Julian's stomach. Hadn't the Vampire King said that he had 2 days? Or was it that Christian had only 2 days? He needed those days to help Christian. He needed those days for himself. I did not believe you would be able to reach through our master fledgling bond to me in this way, Damon answered slowly, as if measuring each word before he said it. The others never could.
You mean the others that took your blood and died permanently?
Julian didn't like to think of himself among others that didn't make it, and it sounded like Damon didn't wish to speak of them either.
He has to speak to me,
Julian thought to himself.
I'm one of these fledglings. Well, sort of. I'm sure he knew the others that he gave his blood to. He must have wanted them to spend eternity with him. He believed that I wasn't going to make it from the get-go. He didn't even delude himself into thinking I could. Maybe he doesn't even want me to.
Yes, Damon finally answered. Short, succinct, curt.
Does that...
Hope sprung in Julian's chest and seemed to lodge in his throat.
Does that mean that I'm not like them?
You are asking me if this means you will not die from my blood. Damon cut through his prevarication.
Yeah, I guess I am.
I wish I could tell you something different, but I do not believe it means that. It just might mean that you could last longer than the others. The end result will undoubtedly be the same. But that will likely make things worse for you. Damon was gentle, but somehow businesslike. That made it harder to freak out and scream like he wanted to. It seemed to demand a response that was professional too. But Julian had never let others set the tone for his responses to things. He had acted in a way he had believed necessary, which was why, when he was brushed off again and again about his parents, that he hadn't stopped asking, or rather demanding, for further investigation to be done.
You don't know that for sure, but I could be different from the others. I could make it,
Julian said with a fierce determination. The earlier weight of inevitability was lifting. He'd always defied the odds. Why not now? No, I do not. But the odds are not in your favor. I do not wish to give you false hope. Damon answered in that neutral but gentle way. Julian tacked to a related subject as he felt he would not win this one with Damon. Only his continued survival or death would show which of them was right.
Why did you cut me off when I left Everdark? I felt you watching me, but you didn't say anything.
Julian demanded to know. I thought it best to not prolong our acquaintance, Damon answered.
Yet, you did hum, didn't you? A little while ago? You meant me to hear that.
Julian asked. I did. I could feel your distress, your pain, your loneliness. Damon answered. I had no idea that you would be able to contact me like this in sleep, though. I thought we would be mostly cut off from one another with you on Earth. This continued connection will make it more difficult.
For whom? I'm the one that is dying. Worried you'll have to watch me do it?
Julian couldn't help the bitterness in his voice. He tried to remind himself that this man, this vampire, had no duty towards him other than what he had already done. So why was this sense of betrayal so sharp and deep?
You've seen lots of people die, I bet. You killed those other 2 vampires without a thought. You don't even know me. What's one more stranger's death to you? Even if you have to be connected to me like this when it happens.
Damon was silent, but Julian could feel that he was biting his tongue. Obviously, Julian's death did mean something to him, though he couldn't think why. You are angry with me, Damon finally said. Damon could evidently tack to a different subject too. There were so many things that Julian wanted to say in response to that statement. He wanted to deny it, angrily, of course, which would dilute the truth of his own response. He wanted to snap that he didn't know Damon enough to be angry with him. He wanted the Vampire King to get over himself. But conversely, he wanted to tell Damon what a bastard he was for abandoning him, for not being there with him until the bitter end. But why? Why did he expect, let alone want, this stranger with him?
Once I'm with Christian again, I won't feel this way about Damon,
Julian thought to himself. The Vampire King heard these thoughts and asked sharply, What do you mean when you're with Christian again? Julian was stunned into silence as he realized that thought had not been private. He considered not answering, but then he realized that was foolish. Maybe Damon would have some knowledge of this Balthazar.
I brought Christian to a hospital.
He felt a momentary sense of confusion from Damon and realized that the Vampire King wasn't sure what that was.
It's a place where people go to be healed by science.
They will not be able to help him. Damon sounded perturbed. I told you the only course—
I know, but he needs to be cared for while I look for another vampire.
Julian answered just as sharply as Damon had before, but he softened his tone as he realized it was his own guilt for leaving Christian in the hands of Dr. Stone that caused his spike in emotions.
I needed to leave him somewhere safe, but it ended up being the worst place possible. Balthazar, the guy who sent Celine and the male vampire after Christian and me, has an acolyte at the hospital. This acolyte figured out what happened to Christian. I mean, he thought that I'd bit Christian, but he got the general gist of things. He knows about vampires and—
You were forced to leave Christian with him as the sun was coming up. Damon read ahead in his thoughts.
Yeah, it was a disaster. I fought this guard and— Look, the deal is that I need to get Christian out of there and still find a vampire to turn him.
Julian finished up.
But the damned sun is out.
Perhaps it is good that Christian is in this Balthazar's hands. He may turn your friend.
What part about sending those people to kill us don't you understand?
Julian growled. Damon sounded amused as he retorted, Only the woman wished you harm. The man was just following her lead and thought she was bluffing.
How do you know that? Could you read their minds like you can mine?
Julian felt a prick of jealousy, which was absurd. Only surface thoughts. If I had been stronger, fighting would have been unnecessary. I would have been able to make them tell us everything. Damon sounded almost regretful.
Yeah, well, if wishes were horses and all that.
Julian tried not to sound even more regretful. There was nothing to do about the past. Are you angry with me for failing you? Damon asked carefully.
No, it's not like that.
His feelings about Damon were a mess when they should have been crystal clear.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. Look, you did me a solid by giving me a way to save Christian. You don't owe me anything else.
Oh? Damon's tone was unreadable, but it wasn't a dismissal of him owing Julian something, which had Julian's mind flipping. I could not come with you. I am too weak to pass over to Earth.
I'm not saying you should have. I can handle this by myself,
Julian answered. But it would be easier if I were there, Damon pointed out, sounding resigned.
Would it? You don't even know what a hospital is,
Julian pointed out.
The whole world is going to be pretty alien to you.
True, but I am a quick learner, and even though most of these vampires might not have been in existence when I went to sleep, I know their kind, Damon said.
I bet you do.
There was a brief silence, and then Damon said, You will be waking soon. I do not think this connection will last, or at least be as clear then. So, may I give you a piece of advice? Julian was shocked that he had slept so long, but he swore he could feel the sun's power waning with every moment.
Sure. Whatever you've got, I'm glad to have.
Damon paused and then said, Though I may not be a clear voice in your ear when you wake, I will still be there. So when you feel something, some indication about what you should do, even if it goes counter to your own thoughts, do it. Julian frowned.
You mean, follow my instincts?
He could almost hear the dark smile in Damon's voice as he replied, Yes, Julian. For those instincts are me talking to you and trying to keep you safe. Join us next time for episode 10, Mark of Ill Fortune.
Many people have asked us if there are ebooks of the Everdark series. Yes, now there are ebooks, as well as Everdark merch. Ebooks are available in PDF, EPUB, and Mobi from our own merch shop. Just follow the link in the notes to the Everdark series to read on your phone or any device. And check out the t-shirts, mugs, art prints, and pop sockets while you're at it. Your support really matters to us as small creators, and any purchases go directly to supporting the creation of more stories, just like Everdark and Dragon's Reign. Thanks, you guys.
The Everdark podcast by X Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thellis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart. Edited by Matthew Prince. Continuity by Adriel Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reads Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.
Hey guys, this is Wraith, author of the gay vampire romance Everdark that you are about to listen to, performed by a multi-actor cast. The podcast would not be possible without Her Grace Reads Studio, which provides the excellent voice talent, and of course, the support of the Wraith Rain members who are subscribers to my site, wraithrain.com, which you will learn about down below and in the podcast. I hope you enjoy how the talented actors bring these vampires and their world of darkness, mystery, and eternal love to life. Now let's get down to it.
Last time on Everdark, Julian and Damon realize that they are still connected over the bond they share as master and fledgling. Does this mean that Julian won't die from Damon's blood? Or is this just the calm before the storm? Everdark, Episode 10, Mark of Ill Fortune. Julian glided through the night-shrouded streets back towards the hospital. The hospital's front entrance practically glowed. The white lights were blinding to his night-sensitive eyes. He shaded his face and squinted to see the front receptionist desk. There was no one there but an elderly woman with a halo of white hair and a powder-blue cardigan around her shoulders. She looked completely harmless, but so had Dr. Stone. Julian lingered half a block away. He listened intently to his instincts. Like Damon had surmised, they were not as closely connected while he was awake as he had been asleep, but he still felt he wasn't alone. Yet he had no sense of danger coming from the hospital. Damon must not feel anything was off. Even if he had, Julian had to find out about Christian. The greater strength that had deserted him as the sun rose had returned in even greater quantity now. So surely he could handle one elderly lady. He tugged the baseball hat he'd picked up at a corner store down lower over his eyes as he slipped through the hospital's automatic doors. He'd grabbed the baseball hat and an overly large sports jacket to hide his identity. He imagined that the hospital might have his description at the desk. His disguise was lame, but it was better than coming back in the exact same clothes as yesterday when he'd punched the security guard across the ER. He sidled up to the desk and put his most winning smile on.
Excuse me, ma'am, but I'm here to see a patient that came into the ER last night, Christian Thorne. I don't know his room number, and I was hoping you could help me with that.
The elderly woman, whose name was June Sorley, according to her nameplate, peered rather owlishly back at him behind Coke bottle-thick glasses.
Let me see, dear.
She typed with agonizing slowness Christian's name into the computer, making no less than 6 typos, which required her to delete the entire name rather than just the wrong character. Julian forced himself to remain still and not tap his foot or drum his fingers on the top of the desk in frustration. He needed to seem normal. He needed to be forgettable. She finally pressed enter, and he leaned forward to catch sight of his best friend's room number, but her head moved remarkably quickly back towards him. She'd already been frowning at the screen, but now she was really frowning at him. He moved back and held up his hands, putting an innocent smile on his face.
Sorry, just anxious about my friend,
he explained.
Didn't mean to crowd you there.
She gave him a once-over, but finally made a small nod in acceptance of his explanation. She went back to frowning at the computer screen. She moved the mouse with exquisite slowness as she clicked here, and then there, and then hit the back button, and then clicked on yet another button, the frown deepening all the while.
Is something wrong?
He asked. His fingers did one drum on the plastic top of the desk.
If there was nothing wrong, she would have given me his room number by now.
I'm not finding any records for Christian Thorne,
she said, sitting back and looking at him stonily. Any warmth was gone from her face. Though her fingers were not on the keyboard any longer, he heard a soft click. Alarm raced through Julian, though he didn't know why. It wasn't just that she was telling him that Christian wasn't there. It was more than that. Something in her demeanor, or...
But he was brought in here last night. I know. I brought him here.
I'm afraid he is not in the system,
she replied, and her gaze flicked to the double doors that led further into the hospital's interior. There was another click, and he saw her right hand was underneath the edge of her desk. It was moving. She was pressing something.
A panic button.
She was waiting for security to arrive. A whisper of a voice echoed in his mind. You can make her tell you what she saw on the screen. Just ask. Julian had already taken a step back from the desk, but at the voice's urging he leaned back and looked into June's eyes. She went rigid in her chair at his nearness, and he heard more frantic clicking.
June.
He said her name, and it came out surprisingly low and melodic. There were harmonics accompanying it. She stiffened more than went sort of limp as he repeated her name.
June. Tell me what was on the system about Christian.
His scalp tickled over the very top of his skull, almost as if electricity were running through it. Her eyes behind the thick lenses went unfocused. She stopped pressing the panic alarm. Her hands were limp in her lap.
He's not here.
She whispered. The words sounded almost like she was talking to him in a dream, uncertain and disjointed. Christian truly was gone, and he had no idea where the nefarious Dr. Stone had taken him. Her gaze started to clear as panic clouded his thoughts. He forced calmness upon himself and spoke to her again.
June, please tell me what else you saw. I know there is more. Tell me.
There was a note from Dr. Stone stating that if anyone was to come looking for this patient, that he should be notified through security.
She answered. He heard people running down the corridor towards them. He noted that the response time was very slow. If he had wanted to hurt June, he could have done so 10 times over by now. But maybe they had to pick up Dr. Stone first. There were shouts, but he couldn't leave just yet. He needed to ask one more question of June. He doubted that this would have been in the system after all. Would Dr. Stone really mark down where he'd taken his kidnapped patients? But he had to ask.
June, does it say anything about where Christian was taken?
He asked. The footsteps were much louder now. He saw a flash of blue uniforms through the glass of the doors. She shook her head. He was already out of the hospital before she uttered the word, no. He dashed down the street so fast that it seemed to take as long to think where he wanted to go, a secluded alley, as it took to get there. He thought he heard Dr. Stone calling his name, but there was no way he was going back there to find out.
But he's the only one who knows where Christian is.
Sick panic flooded him, but then he realized something.
Christian must be with Balthazar. Another vampire would know where Balthazar lives. I don't need Dr. Stone.
Julian's heart seemed to skip a beat as he thought that. His instincts were telling him that this was a good idea. He could have waited until the doctor was off of his shift to tail him and force the doctor to tell him where Christian was. But he likely wouldn't get off until 7 a.m., well after the sun had risen. No, he couldn't get to Dr. Stone in his hospital fortress. He definitely needed to seek out another vampire to get the information he needed.
But where the hell am I going to find other vampires?
Julian drew up the hood of the jacket over his baseball cap so that his face was even further obscured. He stuffed his hands in his pockets and began to walk. He always thought better when he was moving. Head down, he went 2 blocks in the other direction from the hospital, out of the business district and into the nightlife area where there were bars and restaurants open late in the evening. Immediately, he noticed the difference between the 2 areas of the town. By the hospital there was no life, but here it was overflowing. He swore he could feel a pulse as he slipped into the stream of people who were walking down the sidewalks. It was strange to be around people who had no idea that he was a vampire. Many of them, hell, most of them, likely didn't believe vampires existed. Yet here he was, right among them with no one noticing. Laughter and voices boomed all around him. Underneath that noise were the sound of hearts beating and blood whooshing through veins and arteries. Then there were the smells. From the rich scent of cooking meat to the floral scent of perfume to the raw, earthy smell of body odor. He opened his mouth and nearly gagged as he was overwhelmed by what he was sensing. He drew off from the main body of people and hugged the window of a restaurant called L'Étoile. His body was shaking and his stomach tumbling. He was at once starving and yet nauseous. He dug his fingernails into his palms as he struggled to stop from vomiting right there and then. Control each of your senses. Draw them in. Start first with your vision. Focus on one point. The voice that could have been Damon's told him. He stared at the sidewalk between his feet. Now draw in your hearing until all you hear is your own breathing. Julian found himself allowing his eyes to go a little unfocused, and the cacophony of sounds drained down to only his heartbeat. Everything else dimmed to mere background noise. Now, your sense of smell. Put your nose against the inside of your hood. Breathe in just that scent. Julian did, and let out a soft huff of relief as the scent of cotton and rayon filled his nostrils and nothing else. The trembling had stopped as well. He felt strangely weak as he did when he hadn't eaten in days. You need blood, the voice that definitely was Damon said, and it sounded dismayed and shocked. Once more, Julian appeared to be doing things that no other fledgling of the Vampire Kings had done. That made Julian feel good, but he tamped down hope.
Blood? You mean human blood? You mean like biting necks?
Adrenaline had Julian's body tense again, and his senses sought to overwhelm him once more.
I can't do that. I can't.
I am not there to feed you. I did not think you would get so far. Damon's voice sounded like he didn't really expect Julian to be hearing this. He felt the Vampire King's attention snap to him as if he knew then that his private thoughts had been overheard. A fledgling should only feed from his master for the first year, if not longer. Julian's sense of betrayal reared again that Damon wasn't there to feed him like some starving baby bird in a nest, but he pushed it down. It wasn't natural to him. He did things for himself. But then a wild longing replaced the betrayal. He had a reason now to go back to Nightvallen and see Damon once more. He imagined his teeth on Damon's wrist again, or maybe at his throat, while the Vampire King murmured words of eternity into his hair. He shuddered, suddenly shaky and sweaty again, but this time with an overwhelming desire. Damon did not respond to it. Maybe he hadn't experienced Julian's desires, or maybe he was just ignoring them. Julian shook his head to clear it.
I don't have time to get back to the Everdark to feed from you,
he said, ignoring the part where Damon hadn't offered that.
I need to find Christian before it's too late. There's got to be another solution.
Of course, the likely solution was for him to lure one of these people into a dark alleyway and bite them. But as he'd said before, he just couldn't imagine doing that to anyone. He didn't want to hurt anybody. Hunting must be taught. Damon's voice was coming to him very clearly now. That was a relief, at least. He needed this immortal's advice more than ever. It is not easy, and you will make a botch of it the first time out.
Oh, thanks. So you think I'll mess up?
Julian raised an eyebrow. Every new vampire does. Damon chuckled. Even the born killers cannot control themselves at that first taste of blood.
Funny. It just makes me want to retch.
Only for now. That will change.
You mean it would if I lived long enough, right?
Damon was silent, so Julian continued.
Okay, so I just ignore the hunger then, and...
That would be a mistake, too. You are fragile. You could lose control and attack someone. You are so much stronger than I ever thought you could become. Damon's voice dropped off, and Julian imagined him standing out on a balcony in Everdark, watching those eternal 2 moons. Combine finding Balthazar's home with getting blood. There will be at least one blood den in this city for vampires to slake their thirsts. You will be able to purchase blood there, and...
Blood den?
Julian's other eyebrows rose.
Well, that doesn't sound freaky or anything.
It is where vampires go to socialize and feed from willing humans, Damon explained with some amusement. Blood is often stored and sold if the vampire does not care to feed directly. It will be hidden in plain sight, and vampires will be streaming in there at this hour to get their first drink of the night. So all we have to do is find... look there. Julian felt a touch on his chin as if Damon had brushed a finger along his jaw. His head lifted and he immediately saw what Damon had already noticed. Across the street, gliding down the sidewalk with a small, ironic smile on his lips was a beautiful young man. He was dressed fashionably in one of those skinny suits in a silvery grey that hugged his fit form. He had flaxen hair and silver eyes.
Silver eyes. A vampire.
Julian realized.
Did you ever wonder how you would fit into the world of the Everdark? Now you can take a special sorting quiz and find out. I was inspired by things like astrology, elemental magic, and more to come up with the bloodlines of the Everdark. The actors took the quiz too, so be sure to listen to the behind-the-scenes mini-episode to find out which vampire gift they got.
But even if Julian hadn't seen those eyes, He would have known that this person wasn't human. The way the man walked, that glide rather than stride as if he wasn't exactly touching the ground, would have given him away. Julian drew in a deep breath, and though the man was across the road and his scent should have been mingled with all the other smells, he scented blood on him. He'd fed. Julian's teeth suddenly ached. He was immediately distracted, though, from why and what that pain might mean, because he smelled that same scent on a woman and man that flanked the vampire he'd first caught sight of. "Good. You caught them too," Damon said approvingly.
It's so obvious that they aren't human. Why is no one else noticing this?
Julian glanced around and saw no one looking at this stylish, beautiful trio. The woman sported a red silk skirt that hugged her curves like a second skin, and a black lace top that hid little from the imagination. The other man was slightly older than the first, maybe in his early 30s. He had the self-satisfied smirk of the wealthy predator, someone whom the law wouldn't dare touch. He had on a black, skinny suit with a brilliant indigo silk tie. Even without them sharing the same silver eyes and vampire glide, they should have been attracting attention simply for the figures they cut. But no one looked at them except for him. Vampire magic. Damon sounded almost amused. Vampires can use glamours to attract attention, but also to be ignored. The latter is what they are using.
Cool. But am I doing that too? Is that why they can't see me?
Julian asked, curious if he was using some of this vampire magic. No, the disdain was thick in Damon's voice, but it wasn't aimed at him. They are being sloppy, careless. They think of themselves as the top of the food chain, so they are not looking for other predators.
It'll make it easier for me to follow them. They might be going to a blood den, and they might know about Balthazar.
And though he didn't think it clearly like the other statements, he also considered the fact that maybe these vampires would agree to turn Christian and save him. But seeing these arrogant beings with their sleek good looks and obvious disdain for all those around them, he couldn't imagine Christian fitting in with them. More like he could imagine Christian sneering at them, not maybe the people for Christian to be associated with.
I feel like I'm planning his wedding or something,
Julian thought. In a way, you are, Damon answered. The master-fledgling relationship is the closest one there is. Julian didn't say,
Well, you're my master, and we just walked away from one another.
There were reasons for that. Good reasons, but it still stung somehow. Damon went on abruptly. There are also considerations of which bloodline he would be best suited for, and which house within that.
Bloodline?
Yes. Each of the immortals except me, a long pause, has a bloodline. Each bloodline has a special power granted to it, such as the mind control you exercised on dear June in the hospital.
Just one?
Julian frowned.
So making people tell me things is a power from you?
The other bloodlines have only one gift to give. I have all of them.
All of them?
Julian's eyes widened. Yes.
So I have all of them too?
You need to follow our trio. They are almost out of sight, Julian. Damon pointed out.
Shit.
Julian hurried across the street, dodging cars easily as if his hips were oiled. He had always been athletic and confident in his movements, but now he was so much more. Movement was almost effortless. He indulged this effortless speed to get close to the trio until he could have reached out and brushed his fingers down their backs. Not so close, cocky one. Hang back. Not even these arrogant children will fail to notice you that close, Damon chided. But he sounded almost as amused as stern.
Right.
Julian slowed down and let about 20 feet separate him from the trio.
You know, I can hear you perfectly now. In the beginning of the night, I couldn't. You were like this suggestion in my head. But now you're you. Are you getting stronger? Is that why we can communicate like this?
There was a pause, and Julian could have read many things into it, but decided not to. Then Damon simply said, I am getting stronger.
And so am I.
Julian realized. Also, other than the hunger that burned low in his belly like a banked fire, and that sensitivity to sight, smell, and sound, he did feel stronger too. He felt almost good. Not like the night before, when he could well imagine he was dying. But he didn't tell Damon any of this. He already knew that Damon did not want to give him hope that his increased connection between them meant anything, let alone his seeming health. In the Vampire King's mind, Julian was already dead. He was drawn out of those dark thoughts when the trio, who had been easily in his sight and smell, suddenly disappeared.
What the hell?
Julian mentally cried. He raced up to where he had last seen them and looked around frantically. He saw nothing but a plain brick wall on one side and a street filled with traffic on the other, but no vampires. People flowed around either side of him as he continued to stand there completely lost. There were some mutters to move, but Julian found himself thinking,
"Don't see me."
And whether he was using vampire magic, or people were just not in the mood to fight with him, they parted around him like he was a rock in a river.
"They're gone. I've lost them,"
he cried to Damon. Had his inattention caused him to lose his best friend's only chance for survival? Calm, Julian. Look at the building beside you, Damon instructed. Blood dens are not open to the public. They are secret. It will be hidden. You will see a symbol, glowing silver, just out of the corner of your eye. Look for one. Julian turned back to what looked like a blank brick wall. The wall stretched up 2 stories. This building looked incredibly nondescript. There was no restaurant or club occupying the space. Just a brick building with small, dark windows that people seemed not to notice as they made their way past it from Club La Lune or to the noodle shop. Let your vision go unfocused, Damon advised. Do not stare at it directly. Julian sighed and did as Damon advised. At first, nothing happened, but then he saw a glimmer out of the corner of his right eye. He jerked his head towards the glimmer in surprise. The glimmer disappeared the moment he did that. Just let it come, Julian, Damon advised. Julian nodded, then realized that Damon couldn't see him and said,
"Okay, doing this."
He shook himself and then let his vision go unfocused again. The glimmer came after a moment. He forced himself not to look at it directly. He let it come to him. Suddenly, it resolved into a symbol, a vine with thorns. Siren bloodline. Damon sounded pleased. Their gift is that of music. They can create the most aching pieces to move armies. Julian blinked. A slight headache had him squeezing the top of his nose, but he noticed that the silver symbol did not disappear when he looked directly at it now.
"So, is this a blood den?"
he asked. Yes, I do not know if Siren is the ideal bloodline for Christian, but they will know where this Balthazar is. Siren prided himself on always knowing everything. His people will be the same, Damon said with satisfaction.
"Is Balthazar of this Siren bloodline?"
Julian asked, taking from that statement that vampires were territorial. No, the vampires that came after you and Christian were of the Eiros bloodline. They are almost as distrusted as the Kali bloodline, because they can control minds with perfect ease. Even other vampires' minds, Damon explained.
"Christian would really hate that gift. He's so into personal autonomy,"
Julian remarked.
"But truthfully, beggars can't be choosers, right? Christian doesn't have a lot of time, and I'm assuming that vampires don't just take on fledglings for nothing, right? I mean, ones they haven't chosen themselves?"
Damon chuckled. They will do this without objection.
"Why?"
Because they will see my mark on your arm. They will treat this as a direct order from their king, Damon explained as if he were being dense. Julian drew up the sleeve of his shirt and saw the tattoo of the infinity symbol. It was much darker now than it had been when Dr. Stone had seen it. He let the sleeve slide back down. He frowned. Would Damon's symbol really be enough to make these vampires do as he asked?
"You've been gone a long time,"
Julian said, a thought coming to him. Your point being... He could almost see Damon raising his chin in defiance. Julian said slowly, but not as if Damon was stupid. He clearly wasn't, but he was being stubbornly blind to not consider it.
Nobody came to wake you. Those two that entered Nightfall and came to kill Christian and me. They wanted to stop us from exposing vampires as real, but I also think they didn't want you found.
There was a long silence.
My point is, what makes you think they still want you as their king?
Julian's question was met with another long silence. He feared for a moment that he had lost the connection with Damon.
Damon? Damon, are you there?
I am. There was another pause, and then in a completely colorless tone continued. To enter the blood den, all you need do is expose my mark to the symbol. The door will appear. We may lose contact for a moment as you enter Siren's territory, but it will come back as I connect to his realm.
Okay.
Julian paused.
You okay?
Why would I not be? Damon's icy tone brooked no further conversation on that subject. When you go in, there will be some place to get blood. Look for it.
Right. Expose my wrist to the symbol, the door will appear. Look for yummy blood.
He nodded and pulled back his jacket sleeve again. Julian froze.
What?
They will honor their duty and loyalty to me, Damon said quietly. The or else didn't have to be added for it to be there. Loud and clear.
I'm sure they will.
Julian murmured. He lifted his exposed wrist to the symbol.
See you on the flip side.
He was sure that Damon had no idea what he meant by that, but the Vampire King did not reply. There was no pain when he faced his wrist to the symbol. Instead, there was a momentary blurring of the area in front of him. He took a shocked step back. Before him was not a blank brick wall, but a set of beautiful French doors. They were closed now, but Julian imagined in summer that they would be thrown open to allow for sweet breezes to cruise inside. The inside was filled with people, all stylish, all beautiful, even if not conventionally so, all with silver eyes. Julian let out a huff of laughter. This was incredible, right out in the open, but no one else saw it.
Holy shit. The vampires have been right here, all along. I never saw them, never even guessed.
Julian felt conspicuous in his ill-fitting jacket and baseball cap. This was a place where men wore suits or jeans that cost the earth. Not his thing, really. But the way he was dressed now was even worse than his usual attire and would stick out like a sore thumb. He looked at the infinity symbol again.
This is all the currency I need to get in here. All the power I need to make them do what I want.
He drew in a breath to steady himself and went to the brass and glass door. He opened it and stepped in. The trio he had been following was standing right there, staring at him. The vampire he'd first noticed said,
You in the bed, Lottie? He was following us.
But the question is how he got here. He's not one of us.
Lottie said, her eyes drifting down to his right wrist. That was the moment of truth. He went to expose his wrist to them, to show them the infinity symbol, to order them to obey Damon's will. But a slip of a girl, pale hair, eyes, face, looking more like a doll than a person, grabbed his wrist and stopped him from showing the symbol. Her grip was almost painful.
Julian!
She cried excitedly.
There you are. You're late. Glad that charm I gave you got you in on your own.
Bewildered, as he did not know her and she wasn't addressing him as a fan of his show, but as if they were close friends, he stammered out,
Who are...
She leaned up and kissed him on the mouth, silencing him.
I can't wait to get you in a corner and talk about everything.
The trio had gone awfully still at her appearance. She looked to be no more than 15, and if she weighed more than 100 pounds dripping wet, he'd be shocked. But the trio actually backed away from her and him.
Did you show my friend the way, Lottie?
The girl asked.
It seems so, Sophia. Glad we could help.
Lottie flashed a bunch of white teeth at her. When Sophia continued to stare at her in silence, Lottie quickly lowered her head and murmured something about being really glad they could help. Suddenly transforming into what Julian could only compare to an anime schoolgirl, Sophia burst out into a huge smile her eyes nearly shutting with it as she tilted her head to the side and practically cheered.
You guys are the best. Come on, Julian. Let's get a drink.
She practically dragged Julian through the crowd, past what was a really beautiful mahogany bar to a long hallway. There were doors on either side. She opened the second one from the left and pushed him inside. The door opened into a small room with a cozy couch and low table with 2 wine glasses set out on it. She shut the door firmly and stood there listening, he supposed, for long moments. He stood there stiffly, shifting from foot to foot.
Damon, are you getting all this?
But there was no answering remark from the Vampire King. They were cut off from one another. He reminded himself that Damon told him this could happen, but that the conversation would return. This, however, appeared to be the absolute worst time for them to have lost touch. Sophia turned around and looked at him with such awe. There were tears in her large eyes.
You're here. You're finally here. But you're alone, just like she said and I foresaw.
Excuse me, but who are you?
He asked.
Sophia Strange.
You definitely are strange. That doesn't clear up who you are. I don't know you. We don't know one another?
He sounded as if he was trying to determine that.
I mean, we definitely don't know one another. And I wasn't coming here to see you. So why did you say that to those 3 out there?
Because we will know one another.
She told him simply, as if that made complete sense.
And if you had exposed the infinity symbol on your wrist out there, well, they would have tried to kill you.
Join us next time for episode 11, Not the Same.
Many people have asked us if there are ebooks of the Everdark series. Yes, now there are ebooks, as well as Everdark merch. Ebooks are available in PDF, EPUB, and Mobi from our own merch shop. Just follow the link in the notes to the Everdark series to read on your phone or any device. And check out the t-shirts, mugs, art prints, and pop sockets while you're at it. Your support really matters to us as small creators, and any purchases go directly to supporting the creation of more stories, just like Everdark and Dragon's Reign. Thanks, you guys.
The Everdark podcast by Ex Aritare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thellis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart. Edited by Matthew Prince. Continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reads Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.
Hey guys, this is Wraith, author of the gay vampire romance Everdark that you are about to listen to, performed by a multi-actor cast. The podcast would not be possible without Her Grace Reads Studio, which provides the excellent voice talent, and of course, the support of the Wraith Rain members who are subscribers to my site, wraithrain.com, which you will learn about down below and in the podcast. I hope you enjoy how the talented actors bring these vampires and their world of darkness, mystery, and eternal love to life. Now let's get down to it.
Last time on Everdark, Julian, with Damon's help, found his way into a blood den, a bar that's invisible to humans where vampires go to feed. Julian ends up meeting a childlike vampire named Sophia Strange, who reveals that Julian nearly lost his second life because of who his master is. We now turn back to Christian, who chooses Balthazar to turn him into a vampire. Everdark, Episode 11. Not the Same. Christian woke from his dreams of a silver sea in waves. The first wave pushed him to the shallow of consciousness. He felt the light weight of cloth over his body and a soft down pillow beneath his head. Yet he also felt the waves flip him end over end into the churly of that area where the sea still reigned. But the land was calling. He was aware of breath and heat against his back. It was more pleasing than the comforter or pillow. It molded to him, cradled him, and kept him safe. Yet he also felt he was resting on a bench, and he felt skin pressing against his own. This skin was welcome. It belonged to someone who cared for him deeply. He could feel the caring in the soft, stroking touches of his back. His eyes fluttered open. He was safe. He was happy. No beach, no water, just a bed and a comforter tucked up to his chin. He didn't move other than to blink. There was no pain. He felt refreshed and utterly comfortable. One of his secret pleasures between adventures with Julian was lying in a luxurious bed and just being. His mind emptied, his body lax. He could stay like that for hours. Sometimes he would have an audiobook playing in the background or some music. He would drift between sleep and wakefulness. He'd finally go downstairs when he smelled food cooking, as Julian tempted him with pancakes or burgers or something else delicious. For a moment, he thought it must be one of those days where he had nothing to do other than to simply lay about and enjoy the comforts of his bed. But that feeling was almost immediately dashed as he felt another person move behind him. A large, male hand slid around his chest, and someone stretched out against his body. A sleep-roughened voice asked him, "You are awake already? Surprising. But there is so much surprising about you. Pleasing, too." And Lord Balthazar Ravenscroft's voice brought everything back. The city of pale stone, the attack, his nearly dying, his decision to become a vampire, the fact that Julian was somewhere in the city, lost, alone, and scared. Julian needed him. He sat up abruptly. The comforter tumbled down, and Balthazar gave a groan. Cold. You're letting cold air in," Balthazar whined and tried to draw Christian back down onto the bed and beneath the covers. Christian oiled out of his grip and stood up by the side of the bed. His head spun a little, and he was aware of the cool air circulating around his bare skin. He was naked. Buck freaking naked.
What happened after I fell asleep? No, after he commanded me to sleep this morning.
His arse didn't ache. He felt nothing to indicate he'd been ill-used in any way. He turned to face Balthazar suspiciously, though, and with not a little ice in his eyes. The vampire lord was lying on the bed, chest bare and hair rumpled. Balthazar looked incredibly handsome, and there was this devil-may-care half-smile on his lips that indicated he knew it too. Not necessarily in an arrogant way, but as if he recognized a fact and wanted Christian to notice this fact too. Balthazar's eyes left his and slipped down Christian's body, making him keenly aware of his own nakedness.
"Where are my clothes?"
Christian demanded as he cast his gaze around the room. He quickly closed his eyes as his vision kept doing odd things. He could see the individual threads on the comforter and the individual flecks of color in Balthazar's irises. He breathed in and out for long moments before he opened them again. His hands tightened on the comforter to anchor himself with all the myriad of sights and sounds that all seemed to want his attention at the same time. "I'm afraid they had to be destroyed," Balthazar answered and tried to look sad about that, but his laughing eyes belied that. They were caked with blood and dirt. They weren't exactly fashionable either, even without all of that. With his eyes closed, Christian's sense of smell decided not to obey him, and he could smell everything, from the cooled wax of the candle on the bedside table, to the fresh scent of laundry detergent, to Balthazar's scent of cinnamon and cloves, to the remembered coppery smell of blood that had his stomach rumbling. Christian grimaced, and the sense retreated slightly. His vision fixed on Balthazar, and somehow looking at the vampire lord seemed to center him.
Related question? Where are your clothes?
Christian asked dryly. Christian did not cover his own nakedness, even when Balthazar stared a moment too long. He did not let others' bad behavior cause him shame. "I don't sleep in clothes," Balthazar answered. "It's not healthy."
Why were you sleeping naked with me?
Christian's voice was crisp. "Is that a trick question?" Balthazar raised his eyebrows. But then he pulled back the comforter for a moment to show Christian that he was wearing a pair of yellow silk pajama pants. "I'm glad that you confused my skin with silk, though. I would have put you in some of my own things, but I didn't wish to disturb you. And in case you're worried, I kept the comforter between us all night, even when you tried to remove it."
Why would I try to do that?
Christian snapped. The vampire lord's expressive eyebrows rose. "Wouldn't you know better than me? They were your actions, after all." Christian stared at him stonily. Balthazar sighed and scrubbed a hand over the back of his neck. "It's natural for a fledgling to seek his master's body. It's comforting."
You were holding me. I wasn't holding you. I wouldn't have wanted either of those things.
Christian's arms crossed over his chest. He could still feel Balthazar's arm around him. Balthazar stared at him without blinking one of those strange silver eyes. "You minded that?"
Is that a trick question?
Balthazar stared some more. "You don't feel any sense of—"
Love for you? Need to obey you? Wanting to be with you forever?
Christian filled in what he imagined Balthazar was going to say based upon his overheard conversation with Arceus. Balthazar, who was raised up now on one elbow with his legs stretched out, looked both hopeful and worried. "Something like that."
No.
Balthazar blinked, and his mouth moved a bit before he repeated, "No?" Christian shook his head.
This is your bedroom, isn't it? Certainly smells like you. You have clothes in here, don't you? You're not really the same size as me, but anything'll do for now.
"I don't smell bad, but wait a moment. We need to go back to what you feel towards me. Perhaps it's not some kind of overwhelming emotion, but—"
I feel nothing. I don't know you.
Christian slid out of the bed, having to avoid Balthazar's grasp, and headed over to a closed door that smelled of cedar. He guessed this had to be a walk-in closet. He opened the door and was pleased he'd been right. A long, rectangular room was before him. There were various built-in shelves where clothes were neatly folded, shoes stacked, and accessories like watches and cufflinks, incredibly expensive ones, set out for easy accessibility. There were also rows of shirts and pants lovingly pressed. From Balthazar's comments about his own clothes, he would have guessed the man was into his appearance. But the closet just cemented it. He doubted there was anything in this closet that wasn't designer. He felt Balthazar watching him as he pulled open a drawer and found underwear. He grabbed a pair and slid them on, telling himself they were laundered and there was nothing sexual about wearing them. He didn't bother with any of the tailored suits, but looked for more casual, comfortable, and practical clothing. He actually located a pair of jeans and was yanking those on when he felt Balthazar behind him. He spun around and should have fallen on his arse, but managed to catch himself at the last minute. "Christian," Balthazar's voice, and surprisingly those silver eyes too, were kind. He was standing in the doorway, not exactly blocking Christian's way, but definitely trying to get his undivided attention. "You've just gone through an incredible trauma. Maybe we should sit down." Realizing that he was not in any immediate danger, Christian finished buttoning and zipping the jeans as he interrupted Balthazar.
Julian, you said you were sending your people out to look for him first thing. Have you? Where have you sent them? Have you called Julian's phone? I assume you have it since you're clearly familiar with us. Much too familiar.
A flicker of consternation went across Balthazar's handsome features. He really wasn't one to have a poker face, at least not with Christian. Christian tried not to think why Balthazar seemed so affected by him that he couldn't hide his emotions. They did not know one another. He had no reason to feel friendly or kind or whatever it was he felt. This belief that becoming his fledgling would cause emotions like love or attachment to bloom in Christian's chest had been proved totally wrong. So he didn't believe that was affecting Balthazar either on the other end. No. The man felt a connection to him before they had met.
He's watched the videos, and he's likely spied on Julian and me for years.
Balthazar drew a hand through his thick hair that fell in dark locks across his eyes as he lowered his head. "My people were instructed to go to the hospital and wait for him there. That was the most likely place he would return to find you. But they got there too late. He must have been bedded down very near the hospital and left literally as soon as dusk fell. It's surprising that, as a newly made fledgling, that he was awake so soon. We've tried calling him, but he hasn't answered. Ridley is in the midst of trying to ping his phone now so we have a better idea of where he is. Christian froze in the midst of pulling on a high-necked cable sweater in a soft grey. Something about what or how Balthazar was saying this clued him in that it hadn't just happened, but instead had occurred some time ago.
What time is it?
Christian demanded to know, feeling somehow naked without his own phone. He didn't wear a watch, and that was how he always knew what time it was. It was also likely the only number that Julian would pick up for. Again he read consternation, and perhaps a bit of guilt in those silver eyes. An hour past sunset.
You let me sleep!
Christian hissed. His emotions, normally so in check, suddenly slithered out of him and snapped at Balthazar. He was shaking with rage. He turned away from the vampire lord and took in deep breaths to steady his suddenly unruly mind. What was wrong with him? I did let you rest, Balthazar agreed. Of course I did. There was a quick rustle as Balthazar stepped towards him and went to put a hand on his shoulder. Too quick for even his brain to know he was doing it, Christian moved out of Balthazar's reach while lowering himself into a fighter's crouch. He and Julian had learned how to fight. They'd had to in some of the places they'd been.
Don't touch me,
he growled. Balthazar's eyes narrowed as he took in Christian's stance. He stepped back and put up his hands as if to show he was unarmed and meant no harm. I won't touch you. I'm not going to hurt you, Christian. Christian's lips writhed back from his teeth and he felt his incisors ache.
You were in bed with me without my permission. You broke your promise to me about Julian. You said you'd wake me.
A fledgling normally sleeps at least 24 hours after being turned, but I was going to wake you as soon as we had news of Julian, Balthazar said firmly, shutting down the stream of words that wanted to come out of Christian's mouth, no matter how he tried to hold himself back. He ran a hand through his hair again, and a master always holds his fledgling during the first sleep. If he doesn't, there was something haunted in his eyes. The fledgling is left bereft.
I am not bereft. I would not have been bereft,
Christian shouted. You are so sure about that, but you don't know what you're talking about, Balthazar said with a slight burr of anger in his voice. It was good to see something other than the laughing good humor out of the vampire lord. It made Christian feel both better and worse.
I heard what you said to Arceus about a fledgling having no choice but to love his master. But I assure you that you don't have my love.
He choked that out. Love was the most sacred thing to him. He gave it only to a few. This vampire thought to take it from him. He shook his head in disgust.
You were right when you told Arceus that such a thing wasn't real love. It's just manipulation.
Balthazar's pale cheek flamed, and his silver eyes sparkled with genuine, righteous anger. I have never hoped for that. What I hoped for was that you would wake up knowing you were safe and cared for and that you belonged. I hoped that you might look upon me as the man who gave you eternal life, the man who was going to help you find your friend. Maybe I hoped for a little gratefulness, just a little that would start. Balthazar shook his head without finishing what his hope was. I can tell you that the alternative is hideous. If I could have just sat by your bedside and held your hand, I would have. But that is not enough. And you wanted to be near me too, subconsciously maybe, but for certain. I can read minds, Christian.
Julian doesn't have his master spooning with him. I'm sure he's fine.
No, Balthazar cut him off with a sharp wave of one hand. No, Christian, he is not fine. The damage being done to Julian being away from his master is far greater than you know. It could be permanent.
Every month, I give away 2 free books on Amazon. These are often in the same series so that you can get into some of my other worlds and creatures. One of my most popular book series is a multi-book, high fantasy gay romance retelling of Cinderella called Cinders and Ashes. The audiobooks for Cinders and Ashes are also read by Edward and Hannah. It's how I met them. I give Cinders and Ashes books away often, and if you want us to let you know when the next free books are happening, just join my free book email list. It's a simple form, put in your name and email, and the link is posted in the notes down below.
The anger mostly drained from Christian. Balthazar was not lying, he could tell, and he could also see that the vampire lord was worried about Julian, genuinely worried. That took the fight right out of him.
I am grateful for your help.
He swallowed. The shaking rage had stopped.
But I don't like to be touched. Not unless I'm the one to initiate it. And you, I don't know you. But I am grateful. If you just let me borrow these clothes, I will go find Julian on my own, and we'll be out of your hair.
Balthazar was staring at him again in that shocked, perplexed way. Christian, it doesn't work like that. Haven't you heard a word I've said? Christian's back stiffened again. He knew he didn't have data. He knew he should be asking for it. But instead he was snapping and yelling and behaving in a completely out-of-control way for him.
Doesn't work like what?
He asked, still sharp. You don't leave your master. Not on the first night you're turned. Not for decades of nights, Balthazar explained. He shook his head violently. There's so much I didn't get a chance to tell you. All of this would have been explained before you were turned if things had gone the way they should have. Decades. Balthazar expected to be a part of his and Julian's life for decades. Christian was shaking his head.
No, I'm sorry. I knew you hoped that this would lead to something between us, though I have no idea why, but it's just not going to happen. You've helped me, and I'm grateful, but I need to leave now,
Christian said. He turned from Balthazar to look for socks and a pair of shoes that might fit. He found some brown loafers that were actually comfortable. Balthazar was far more built than he was, but they had almost the same shoe size. This outfit would do for now until he got to Wingate and changed into his own things. While Julian might not be at the manor, he would likely be near it.
I need to get back to the house. Call him on the landline. Maybe he's even watching the house, waiting for me to return.
I can see you're very eager to go. Balthazar's tone was neutral. His stance was not at all aggressive, but Christian was suspicious of him as he swung back to look at the vampire lord who still stood in the doorway.
And you're going to let me go?
Christian asked, knowing even as he did so that it wasn't likely that Balthazar would tell him no, even if he really had no intention of letting him leave. You spoke about mind control and manipulation before. I can assure you that as an Iros that I am quite skilled at it, but I will never use it against you, Balthazar said, and a look of such disgust crossed his features that Christian had no doubt about the truthfulness of that statement.
But?
Christian also heard a but. You are very logical, scientific. In all of your videos, it's clear that a cool head is one of the benefits you bring to your partnership with Julian. When things are at their most dire, you act with as little emotion as possible, Balthazar said, not answering his question exactly, but Christian felt he was leading around to it.
Are you suggesting I'm doing that now?
He hardly felt like his usual cool-headed self at the moment, but maybe he had fooled the vampire lord. No, I am suggesting you are doing the exact opposite right now, and I think you know this, Balthazar answered, dispelling any hopes that Christian had that he wasn't coming across like a crazy person. Christian's hands fisted at his sides for a moment, but he didn't disagree. It was pointless. But I'm going to reach out to that logical side of you now, the cold, hard, calculating side that examines every situation without emotion to convince you that leaving is not something that you should even consider doing. Balthazar did not try to approach him again, but the vampire lord's voice was tender and luring.
There's a logical reason to stay?
Quite a few. He shifted his stance and began carefully. Christian, even if being viciously attacked last night was something you can simply ignore, you're becoming a vampire. Right now, every cell in your body is changing you into a different species with abilities that are miraculous. If you think that doesn't have an effect on you emotionally, you are deluding yourself. Christian didn't respond. He was thinking much the same thoughts as Balthazar, except he was trying to not think too hard on this transformation. He hadn't even glanced into the mirror over the vanity to see if his eyes were silver like Balthazar's. He was avoiding the whole vampire thing. Pretend you walk out that door. What is your first step? Balthazar asked as he gestured towards the bedroom door.
To go home.
Christian mumbled and bit his lower lip. He sounded like a child after having had a terrible day wanting to retreat to the safety of home and his room. Of course. Balthazar's face went pained for a moment. Of course you want to go home.
But I can't?
He made it more of a question than a statement. No, you cannot go home. Physically, of course you can. But you are not who you were when you left there last, Balthazar told him, gently, kindly. He leaned his back against the threshold. Now, let's keep going with this thought experiment. You leave here and go home. You only have 12 hours at most to find Julian, and feed, and find a place where you'll be safe from the sun. What will you do? Block out the windows at Wingate with cardboard? Maybe. Feed. Maybe you'll find a neighbor's cat or dog and drink from them.
Is that possible? Can we drink blood from other animals? Since humans are animals.
No, we can't. The truth is that while you can survive on non-human blood for a time, your mind goes... Balthazar made a circular motion by his temple and one hand to indicate insanity.
Are you sure? Have there been any studies done? For example, that drinking from cows versus cats?
Like peer-reviewed double-blind studies? A smile twitched the corners of Balthazar's mouth. Christian stiffened, affronted.
Yes? Exactly like that.
Balthazar looked even more amused. Yes, of course there have been. Believe me that, outside of the diehards that worship drinking from other sentient beings, that most of us would love to be able to drink from livestock. From time to time, at least. It would be so much more convenient and less complicated than having to feed from humans who might run off and tell everyone about us.
Oh.
We've turned some of the best scientific minds into vampires, Christian, just to work on this problem, Balthazar explained.
You've turned scientists?
Christian had to admit that he was surprised, but it was only logical. Yes, of course. Don't worry, or maybe hope, that we have Einstein or Curie down in a basement somewhere. Those who are too famous can't be turned. Too much possibility of exposure again. But people who would have been in their sphere have been found and turned before anyone heard of them.
That makes sense.
Christian nodded, pleased at what sounded to him like some very logical thinking. He was falling into his normal state of following arguments. So let's go back to realizing that you have to feed only from humans. I bet you're thinking that a blood bank or a hospital is a great idea, right? Balthazar lifted his head as if to offer him a chance to figure out what was wrong with that.
Security. There's a lot of it around blood supplies. I would likely be seen, maybe even arrested. Also, I'd be stealing from patients who need it.
Christian's heart fell. So you must take what you need from a real person, a real live person. You must somehow lure them away from others who care for them or are simply looking. Balthazar made a gesture with one hand as if opening a curtain and then closing it. Then charm them enough so that you can get close enough to actually bite them. And you don't like being touched by strangers, so this will be a lot of fun for you, I'm sure. Christian swallowed shallowly. His mouth was watering at the thought of blood, but his stomach was churning at the same time. And Balthazar was quite right about the touching. You're intelligent, Christian, so you already know it won't be easy to feed from a person. And one of two things, or maybe both, will happen. Balthazar's jaw flexed. You will either kill them as you messily rip their throats out in your overwhelming hunger, or they run away, screaming about vampires. You then race after them, snap their necks, and then start feasting on the dead body because, again, overwhelming hunger. You or the corpse is likely to be discovered and the existence of vampires revealed. Christian crossed his arms tightly over his chest. And remember, this has to all take place at the same time that you have to find Julian and obtain a secure place to sleep for when dawn comes. Balthazar started checking things off on his fingers. Now, let's add some more things to this picture. You're already experiencing some of the benefits of being a vampire, better eyesight, hearing, smell, etc. But they aren't doing you much good right now. They're actually getting in the way because you have no control over them. Christian agreed with him there. He actually had a headache from his vision freaking out. And that doesn't even get you into the gift you have from being of the Iros bloodline. Balthazar laughed grimly.
What gift?
You can control other people's minds, but before you can do that, you'll have to learn to stop hearing minds all around you, Balthazar said. He gestured around them. Iros vampires learn to hide their thoughts. That's why you aren't hearing any. This house is set away from the other homes, giving us space so we aren't listening to our neighbor's every mundane thought, or even the interesting ones. He brightened at the latter, and then went on seriously again. So you'll be hearing people's thoughts, body freaking out, hungry as hell, while trying to find Julian and a place to be safe from the sun, all in 12 hours or less. Christian straightened and said with a confidence he did not feel.
It does sound daunting, but I'm good at figuring things out. I can figure this out.
Balthazar looked like he had expected Christian to think that. Maybe he was reading Christian's mind right there and then. I left the best part for last. The people who killed Julian's parents and sent Celine and Heath to kill you tonight. They're still looking for the two of you. Just because you are vampires now does not mean they will not kill you, Balthazar said with cold precision. They are more likely to put you down now. A newly born fledgling without a master is rightly considered a threat to our security. You will do something that will reveal our existence. You will cause trouble. You must be ended.
I see.
I think you do. Now, Christian knew that leaving Balthazar at that moment was a mistake. He needed data. He needed training. After he had that, then he could leave. But not before. How had he not seen this? How had he missed it? Why was he so ready to run off?
So why did I not think of this? I mean, I see it now, but...
Christian was surprised by how small his voice sounded. He cleared his throat and said far more firmly,
My mind is not clear.
Again, that tender look. Of course it isn't. How could it be? Christian, your ability to control your emotions is a good one. You've been acting like you don't have any. You do. Believe me that you are a mess right now, and that is not a weakness or a flaw in you. That is normal, even for someone as high-functioning as you are. Christian buried his nose in his sweater and smelled Balthazar's scent. It was oddly calming, and he just breathed it in again and again.
I need Julian. I can't think about anything else until he's safe.
Yes. Balthazar nodded as if this made the most sense in the world. Once Julian is with you, you'll feel better, more secure. Julian is home, after all, isn't he? It was shocking to hear his relationship with Julian so easily analyzed by a complete stranger. He guessed that there was far more in those videos they posted for the world to see and speculate on than he wanted to consider. Things about him and Julian and their caring for one another, deeper than blood brothers. At that moment there was a brief knock on the bedroom door. Balthazar called for the person to come in. A young woman, younger looking than Christian and Julian, maybe in her late teens, appeared in the open doorframe. She wore a pair of black boy shorts and a cut-off t-shirt. Her short, dark hair stood up on end.
Balthazar,
she said, her voice hushed and whispery. Ridley, were you able to ping Julian's phone? The lazy, laconic Balthazar was gone, replaced with a man very much on point and in charge. She shook her head but quickly added before either Christian or Balthazar could be disappointed.
No, but that doesn't matter. I've got something better than that. A friend who I tipped off saw Julian. In fact, he knows where he is right now.
Christian found himself drawing near to Balthazar as his heartbeat sped up with excitement and relief. They were going to find Julian. Don't keep us in suspense. Balthazar was already reaching for some pants. Where is he?
In the dagger, the siren's blood den,
she said. Balthazar was furiously frowning. How did he get in there? He doesn't have a siren mark. She shrugged.
I don't know, but my friend wasn't the only one who noticed him. He says he's overhearing people plan to grab him and take him to the Order. There's a bounty on his head.
Bounty? That can't be good.
Balthazar let out a shrill laugh. Wonderful! Another mess! Another! Well, nothing has ever gone right before. Why this? Come on, Christian. Looks like you're going to get your first night on the town as a vampire much earlier than I'd hoped. Join us next time for episode 12, Rescue.
Many people have asked us if there are ebooks of the Everdark series. Yes, now there are ebooks, as well as Everdark merch. Ebooks are available in PDF, EPUB, and Mobi from our own merch shop. Just follow the link in the note to the Everdark series to read on your phone or any device. And check out the t-shirts, mugs, art prints, and pop sockets while you're at it. Your support really matters to us as small creators, and any purchases go directly to supporting the creation of more stories, just like Everdark and Dragon's Reign. Thanks, you guys.
The Everdark podcast by Ex Aritare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thellis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart. Edited by Matthew Prince. Continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reads Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.
Hey guys, this is Wraith, author of the gay vampire romance Everdark that you are about to listen to, performed by a multi-actor cast. The podcast would not be possible without Her Grace Reads Studio, which provides the excellent voice talent, and of course, the support of the Wraith Rain members who are subscribers to my site, wraithrain.com, which you will learn about down below and in the podcast. I hope you enjoy how the talented actors bring these vampires and their world of darkness, mystery, and eternal love to life. Now let's get down to it.
Last time on Everdark, Christian awoke to find himself a vampire, but his only thought is to find Julian. Yet, as a newly turned vampire, he cannot exist without his master at his side. We now turn back to Julian, who has made his way into a siren blood den to find a vampire to help Christian. But these vampires may want to kill him. Everdark, Episode 12, Rescue.
Kill me?
Julian repeated the words to make sure that he'd heard Sophia right, but at the same time, he wasn't surprised. He'd wondered if people in the modern age would accept a king.
Why would they want to kill me exactly?
Sophia nodded.
You're the proof
Of what?
that King Damon actually exists. He's become a myth, you see, to most vampires, and to the ones that know about him being real, he's a threat.
Sophia explained. The world had changed since Damon had been awake. Not just humanity, but perhaps the vampires had moved on too from the idea of kings and queens. Someone had to have filled the power vacuum he'd left. They weren't likely to be willing to give that power up to a king some of them might not even remember or even knew existed.
Because they're ruling things now, and they don't want to step aside?
Julian guessed. She nodded.
But more than that, you see, our whole religion is based upon two things.
Vampires have a religion?
His eyebrows crawled up into his hairline.
Oh, yeah. We even have a religious order, which,
She coughed and colored as if embarrassed.
in a spot of originality, we called the order.
Makes it easy to remember.
It does.
She gave him one of those anime schoolgirl grins, then went on.
So, as I was saying, there are two main precepts. First, the immortals made us, and second, we cast them down to be free.
Ah, that's also easy to remember.
And it was. But Damon hadn't mentioned being cast down. A realization hit Julian then.
Damon doesn't know. He has no idea that this happened. This casting down stuff sounds like they were killed.
She nodded.
And simplistic and really not accurate. I mean, the part about them creating us is, but the second part is where things get a little bit more complicated.
When you say that the immortals were cast down, what do you mean exactly? Was Damon supposedly a part of all that?
The tale is that all the immortals were killed, but not King Damon. In fact, those who did the killing claimed to be working in his name, that he had given them the strength to throw off their oppressors and live strong and free as vampires should.
He was already shaking his head as he answered,
Damon had no idea about this. He didn't give any of these vampires any power to do anything of the sort. He was wondering where all the immortals went, and why they didn't come to bring him blood.
As soon as Julian said this, he wondered if he should be telling her these things. It exposed Damon's lack of knowledge and, potentially, his weakness. But he felt that she was trustworthy.
I'm sure that's true, but I wonder if he would have approved of the war anyways. The immortals were destroying everything he had built. My mistress Seer believed that. It was part of the reason why she remained neutral.
Sophia answered. She tilted her head listening for something, but then went on as if whatever she'd heard wasn't an issue.
But remember, what I'm telling you is a story, certainly not the truth.
Got you. What's the real story?
She rolled her eyes and grinned at him.
That would take ages to tell. There are treatises about it, but in a nutshell, King Damon went to sleep to await a day when a mortal would be born that could survive his blood. When that day came, he would awaken and lead us again.
Julian's breathing ceased. Damon was awake now. He'd taken Damon's blood.
And I'm still alive. Maybe he's wrong about me dying. Maybe I'm the one prophesized.
But that seemed insane. He hated vampires. They'd killed his parents. They'd killed his best friend. And they wanted to kill him now. How could he be prophesized to do anything with vampires?
The 10 remaining immortals were to govern the vampire world as a council while he was sleeping and tend to his tomb in Nightfallen.
Sophia continued, doing that headcock listening thing again. Seemingly satisfied by whatever she was hearing, she went on.
But a war started between certain bloodlines. I don't know which one started it. Some say Callie, others say Varen. But regardless, a war between them began and most immortals took one side or the other, some double or even triple crossing each other.
Sounds charming.
My mistress Seer refused to join in, urging peace and warning what would come if they did not stop in this course. But no one listened.
Sophia sighed.
Not a surprise. I guess these immortals are more like the Greek gods.
That's quite true. In any case, the immortals used their fledglings like cannon fodder, sending them in wave after wave against one another. It was a slaughter.
Sophia shivered.
In order to add to their armies, fledglings were made without regard to their ability to accept what they were, or if they would have control not to attack anyone on sight. Forget love and affection. Some of those created were simply insane. It was terrible.
Sophia's shoulders curled inwards. She wrapped her thin arms around herself and hugged her own body. Julian couldn't blame her. Julian guessed that some of his own feelings of betrayal and loss came from just being separated physically from Damon. The fledglings that had just been created to fight and die would have been a mess.
So the cannon fodder decided they would tear down the immortals rather than each other.
Julian guessed. She nodded.
But they didn't stop with just those immortals who had used them. They went after every single one of them.
Including Seer?
He found himself asking softly. She brushed a hand over her silver eyes.
Yes, but the ones that rose against her didn't do so just because they wished to revenge themselves on all immortals. They wanted her gift, so they've imprisoned her.
Where?
I don't know. That's one thing that has always eluded me,
She admitted. After thinking on that for a moment, he pivoted back to something she'd said earlier.
You mentioned that Seer was your mistress. So she made you? Turned you into a vampire?
She nodded.
I was one of the last she turned herself.
But I also take it from how you speak of her that you weren't one of the vampires that wanted her imprisoned.
No, I would never betray her. I care for her deeply. She is my beloved mistress.
Sophia pressed both hands against her chest over her heart.
All who are of her bloodline have stayed true to her. There are just too few of us to make much of a difference. Seer made few fledglings, and her fledglings have made even less.
Why?
Because her gift was too much of a curse. Madness and suicide are common among the seer.
She answered, and he tried to picture this giddy little girl slitting her wrists or walking out into the sunlight to end it all. It was Julian's turn to shiver.
What is her gift?
To see the future.
Sophia gave him a thin smile, and he sensed it was full of sharp-edged memories. He blinked.
You can really do that?
That's how I knew you were coming, and that we'd be friends.
The megawatt smile was back.
So I decided to cut to the chase and act as if we're friends now. Makes things easier, doesn't it? Gets rid of the middleman.
Ah, yeah. That makes some sense, I guess.
He ran a hand through his hair.
Let me back this all up a minute, to why I would be killed if I'd showed Damon's tattoo to the vampires out there.
He pointed to the front of the blood den.
If the vampires believed that Damon gave them the strength or whatever to overthrow the other immortals, wouldn't the majority of vampires be thrilled he's awake? Unless they're the ones in charge. Are they?
Oh, they wish. But no, these are just run-of-the-mill fledglings, turned no more than 200 years ago.
She shrugged, as if a couple of centuries was nothing.
Besides, they're sirens. Not exactly a powerful bloodline. Imagine having to whip up a song to actually get people to do anything for you.
She rolled her eyes.
It's really the poor version of the Eros bloodline. Not that anyone ever really says that to their faces.
But you're here, hanging with them.
Julian pointed out.
Or is that because you foresaw me coming here?
Yes and no. Seers are welcome to live with every bloodline because of our gift. Knowing what's coming is a powerful tool.
She explained.
And since we no longer have a home of our own, we have to make do.
Why don't the people who have Seer in prison imprison you too?
Some of us do despair, but being able to see the future, well, it keeps most of us out of trouble.
Julian felt like his head was spinning from all the information she was giving him. He poked at Damon again, but still was hearing nothing from the Vampire King. Damon probably would make sense of all this faster than he was.
So you foresaw me coming, but Seer wasn't able to stop herself from being kidnapped?
He asked, slightly skeptically.
You have to understand that being kidnapped and imprisoned was the only way she foresaw that what is happening now and in the future will happen the way she wants, the way it should be.
And that is?
He prompted, feeling he was missing something.
You being born and Damon waking up and kicking some ass.
She nodded sagely.
Me being born?
His eyebrows lifted. She tilted her head to the side.
You don't know? He doesn't know? He must be weak if he didn't recognize you.
Who didn't recognize me?
Julian had a feeling he knew what she meant, but he had to have her say it. He needed to hear someone else believe he wasn't going to die.
You're the human strong enough to survive his blood. Well, you're not human any longer. You're a vampire now.
He felt a wave of gratefulness sweep through him.
You're sure I'm going to survive?
You're right here. Perfectly fine.
She pointed out, giving him a strange look.
Yeah, but Damon thinks I'll die soon.
Technically, you're already dead. Second life and all that.
She shook her head.
I do not want to gainsay our king, but I think he may simply fear that you will die a second time rather than actually know it.
Julian really hoped that she was right.
Obviously, that's my hope too.
You seem strong and healthy, if a little peaky from being hungry. He's not with you, I take it? He's in Nightfallen.
Again, he wondered if he should tell this strange vampire the truth, but he sensed he should. So he simply nodded.
He's going to stay there for a while to get things sorted.
He must be really weak after not feeding. I imagine he can't make the journey between planes.
You didn't foresee that, did you?
She laughed.
Oh, no. I don't see everything that's coming. Just some crucial things, like what's coming next.
Julian froze.
What's coming next?
Well, we're about to get attacked.
She told him, eyes nearly slits as she smiled broadly.
What?
Julian went to the door, but she waved him away.
Why did you bring us into a room with only one exit if you knew we were going to be attacked? And why are they going to attack us? You stopped me from showing the tattoo.
Don't worry, Julian. Everything is going to be just fine. We're safe in here for now. When that changes, I'll move us.
She grasped his arm and drew him away from the door. Somehow he believed her and mirrored her calm.
As to how they know you're, well, not like us. First, there's the issue about your eyes.
My eyes?
Julian blinked in self-consciousness as she rose up on her tiptoes to look into them.
They aren't silver. They're this beautiful shade of purple.
She said. Arms crossed behind her back and swayed from side to side. This was yet another movement he'd seen only in animes, yet it seemed as natural as breathing when she did it.
Damon's are red. Maybe that's why mine are different.
He almost reached up to touch his eyes as if he could feel the color.
You haven't looked at yourself yet. Well, you're quite down to earth then.
She laughed.
Even though you're quite lovely.
I had bigger things on my mind. I guess I should be glad my eyes aren't blood red like Damon's. That would have caused an issue with some of the humans I met tonight.
He answered, feeling slightly relieved that he didn't look quite so alien as Damon did.
Beautiful, but not human.
Well, others certainly noticed you and those eyes of yours. So they decided to check out my story about the charm.
She explained with a twirl of her hands in the air.
I'm a guest of the sirens, which is why I have a charm to come and go from their properties. But they aren't given out like candy.
I would imagine not.
Julian felt a little faint.
To get one, I would have needed the vampire lord whose house I'm residing in to have granted me one. They must have found out he didn't, and someone just checked the security feed and saw your tattoo. Then they called the order.
Sophia seemed excited as she told him this, as if she were relaying the plot of a movie rather than their current circumstances.
What's a shame is that the order would have likely killed all the sirens here tonight because they, too, might have noticed you.
Kill them?
Would have, but they won't get a chance because Balthazar is coming.
A dreamy smile crossed her lips. He froze.
Balthazar?
Balthazar was coming here? The vampire who had sent the two vampires after him and Christian? The vampire that might have Christian?
Yes.
She seemed so happy that he was stunned for a moment.
Damon, I really need your help. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Nothing.
Not only are the Everdark actors incredibly talented at what they do, they're also fascinating people. I hope you're getting to know them as well as me in our mini Q&As every week. If you tend to skip those, go back and take a listen. Sometimes we talk about the episode you just heard and get a little more into lore or characters. Other times it's about the craft of voice acting, vampires in general, fantasy and games, or just life. These interludes are only about 5 to 8 minutes long, and if you have thoughts of your own about what we're talking about, we want to hear them. Come to the YouTube version of the episode and leave a comment. The voice actors are also keen to know your thoughts and are watching the comments as well.
He dug his fingernails into his palms. That was when he heard the shouting. The crowd in the blood den had been noisy before, but now there was a wave of sound that was different than before. This time when he went to the door, Sophia did not stop him, but followed closely after him instead. He cracked the door open and saw the two vampires. Ones he didn't recognize in what looked like monk's robes were frozen in mid-step coming down the hallway. Their heads, though, were turned towards the front door. It appeared that everyone was looking in that direction, though he couldn't see why.
The order came to kill you.
Sophia whispered. She had ducked her head beneath his arms and was looking out of the cracked door with him.
Just steps away, but they might as well be miles.
I thought you were going to warn me when we were in danger.
He pointed out to her.
Like you said, they're just steps away.
We aren't in danger. Balthazar is here, see?
She pointed out down the hall towards the door. Julian craned his head. Two of the vampires parted, and he could indeed see a very handsome man striding just inside the door, flanked by another vampire in monk's robes. He was as big as a berserker, and on the other side...
Christian!
Julian nearly lunged through the door, but Sophia's hand was on his wrist again, and she tugged him back with surprising strength.
No, Julian, not yet. Wait for Balthazar to get things taken care of.
She warned.
But Christian...
Is fine. His eyes are silver, Julian. Balthazar turned him. He's safe.
She petted his arm. He hadn't told her about Christian yet, but she knew. Yet his lips writhed back from his teeth and he felt his incisors elongate, not in anger at her, but in fear for Christian.
You don't understand. Balthazar!
He isn't your enemy.
Her silver eyes stared into his.
Whatever you're thinking is wrong. Let Balthazar take care of this.
At that moment, a voice rose up from one of the vampires in the blood den.
Balthazar, what are you doing here?
And how did you get in? We don't allow Iros trash in here.
Another voice rose up.
Especially exiled Iros trash.
There were some angry snarls from other sirens. Balthazar, in his sleek suit that made the other men in the room look like bumpkins somehow, just smiled slowly like a cat fed on plenty of fatty cream. I was invited, Balthazar drawled, as he then reached behind him and brought forward a young man that looked almost dazed, as if he were half asleep. Balthazar pushed him towards the other vampires. The angry snarls from before grew even angrier. Fangs were suddenly extended. Fingers were ripping at the air like claws. The sense that every vampire in the room was about to launch themselves at Balthazar, not to mention Christian, was evident.
What is he doing?
Julian hissed, his fingers digging into the wood of the doorframe.
He's egging them on.
Don't worry.
Sophia touched his arm, and he found it comforting and familiar somehow.
Balthazar might only be a little over 2 centuries old, but there's a reason he was able to defeat his own master. People whisper that he's Iros-born. Watch what he does, and you'll understand why even vampires fear the Iros.
Julian found himself looking back to see what Balthazar would do. His gaze also latched onto Christian. His best friend appeared very well, not sick nor hurt nor weak. Christian had his game face on. He appeared completely unconcerned, as dozens of angry vampires hissed and spat at him.
There are 2 Order confessors here.
It was the big berserker man who spoke. His silver eyes unerringly found the 2 similarly robed figures at the mouth of the hallway. They both straightened. One of them, a woman with such pale blonde hair that it looked almost white, stepped forward and addressed him.
We were invited, Confessor Arceus Kane.
Unlike you and the other exiles.
The second robed figure pointed out acidly. He was also a big man, so heavily muscled that not even the shapeless robes could hide his figure.
Whoever called you in would not have done so if they'd had understood who you're really interested in and why.
Arceus answered evenly. And I wonder what you intended to do to them. Balthazar tilted his head towards the crowd. They've seen what you want hidden. You wouldn't take the chance of them telling anyone about your visit tonight. Or worse, figuring out.
Silence!
The female confessor shouted.
You are an exile and an unbeliever. You have no say in Order business or vampire business.
Now that's just petty. Balthazar's eyes narrowed.
If any of them move or interfere, you are sanctioned from the preceptor himself to kill them.
The female confessor said to the crowd, and turned back towards where Julian and Sophia were still peeking out of the door. Julian would have jerked back, but Sophia put a hand out and pushed the door all the way open.
It's safe for us to go now, Julian,
she told him, which was insane. They were in more danger than ever, but she stepped out of the room into the hallway, looking tiny and waif-like, and she was unafraid. Julian wasn't going to hang back like a frightened child when Sophia was out there. She could tell the future after all. But more importantly, he wouldn't have her fight his battles. So he stepped out too. That's when Christian saw him.
Julian!
Christian made the same move to lunge towards him as Julian had. But just as Sophia had stopped Julian, Balthazar held Christian back.
Balthazar, let me go! Julian!
We have this, Balthazar said.
Then do something!
Christian cried. At that, Christian grasped Balthazar's lapels and looked up at him rather desperately. The look that crossed Balthazar's face was not unusual. The very few times that Christian had leveled that "help me" gaze at someone, they invariably did what he asked. It was almost a dopey look. But then Balthazar was smiling, as if someone had given him the absolute best present ever. He patted Christian's hands, which immediately had Christian withdrawing those clutching hands and looking momentarily affronted, as if he had no idea how they'd gotten there. Balthazar did not appear to be in the least deterred. "I'm working up to it, Christian. Don't worry." He then turned to the berserker. "Arceus, deal with your fellow religious people."
Religious people?
Arceus raised a thick eyebrow. "Don't get touchy. Go save Julian, please," Balthazar said.
Do not do this, Arceus!
The female confessor cried. "Really, dear, someone should have been warning you." Balthazar gave a razor-sharp smile. The female confessor appeared unimpressed and addressed the siren again.
If the exiles move, not only do you have sanction to kill them, there will be a reward and recognition by the preceptor for doing so.
There was now an eager note in the snarls that started up again. The male confessor had already turned back towards Sophia and Julian. Julian stepped in front of the much smaller vampire. She reached for his hand, and he thought it was because she was scared, but instead she raised his right arm up and drew down the sleeve of his coat to expose the infinity tattoo.
This is what the confessors are here for. They don't want you to know the truth.
She called out, her voice clear like a clarion.
King Damon has returned. Look at his mark. His true fledgling has been turned.
The sirens turned almost at one at her words. Julian grimaced as it felt like the tattoo was burning. There were gasps, claims that it couldn't be real, shouts that it was a hoax. Others actually fell to their knees, silent with hands covering their mouths. In comparison, the male confessor actually let out a snarl of disgust and hatred. His eyes glowed hot silver, and he leaped towards Julian and Sophia. All hell seemed to break loose in the blood den too. There were cries and screams and snarls. Julian's newfound powers seemed to desert him, and all he managed to do was cringe down as the barreling confessor charged. "Stop." One word from Balthazar. One simple word. And everything stopped. Everyone stopped. The air seemed to tingle like electricity ran through it. Sophia managed to somehow let his arm go, though he still had it raised, and caught the male confessor by the throat. She held him there effortlessly while Julian just goggled. Other than Sophia, himself, and Balthazar's group, every vampire in the place was just frozen, in the exact stance with the exact expression they'd had when Balthazar had spoken that one word.
Julian!
Christian's voice rang out as his best friend leaped over the vampires in his way until he was throwing his arms around Julian.
Oh, thank God, Christian. You're all right. You're all right.
Julian held on to his best friend like his own life depended upon it. He buried his face against Christian's shoulder. Since this whole ordeal had begun less than 24 hours ago, he felt he had lived a lifetime.
I thought, God, I don't know what I thought. Am I right, Julian? Balthazar explained that everything about what Celine and Heath did, those were the vampires that attacked us in the city, wasn't on his orders. I believe him, though he's a little different.
Christian colored slightly at the end and looked away, then shook his head. Julian pulled back to look at the continued frozen vampires. Sophia had put down the male confessor. He laid on the floor like a leaping statue. She wended her way towards Balthazar and Arceus.
I'll say, are you seeing this, Christian?
Julian asked, gesturing towards the frozen vampires.
How is he doing this?
With great difficulty. Balthazar laughed, but he did look a little strained. I can't keep it up forever. Arceus, Ridley, I'll need your help with them. Christian, why don't you and Julian go out to the car? Oh, hello. Balthazar said the last to Sophia, who had stopped in front of him and was smiling at him with those wide anime eyes. Her hands were crossed behind her back again, and she was doing that swaying back and forth thing.
Lord Balthazar, I'm Sophia Strange,
she said winningly. Yes. Yes, of course. The seer. Balthazar tilted his head to the side. He had this very uncertain expression on his face, as if he were looking at an alien life form.
And now the newest member of your household.
Her smile got wider, which Julian didn't think was possible. What? Balthazar asked, boggling. A smile tugged at Arceus's lips.
It would be quite a coup. Make us seem legitimate to have a seer in House Ravenscroft.
I think people just say that because they are hoping to get rid of the seer they have. Make you take them on, Balthazar said. He turned back to her, but she didn't look at all offended by what he'd said.
She helped me.
Julian found himself saying.
She saved me. If she hadn't stepped in, I don't know what would have happened.
You would have been killed.
Sophia said helpfully.
Yeah, probably that.
Julian scrubbed one hand across the back of his neck while holding onto Christian with the other.
If she saved Julian, then she's okay in my book. We can't leave her here in any event.
Christian said. A mulish expression crossed his pretty face.
Wouldn't you like to know what's going to happen in your future, Lord Balthazar?
Sophia's voice was soft and sweet, but there was a sense of her ancientness. Balthazar's eyebrows rose. She leaned towards him, one foot popping up while she lowered her voice even further.
Don't you want to know about your upcoming greatness?
Now Balthazar was looking interested. He opened his mouth, but Sophia was already kissing his cheek.
Oh, I am so glad to be part of your household, Lord Balthazar. And I need to thank you in advance for the beautiful new furnishings that you'll be buying for my room to make it a true home for me. I'll just go and wait for everyone in the car.
She practically skipped out of the blood den. Balthazar watched her go, mouth parted, eyes wide, as if he wasn't sure what had just happened. He turned back to them and shook his head. What?
Since she sees the future, she figures why bother waiting for things to actually happen. Cuts out the middleman that way.
Julian explained to Christian and Balthazar. Right. That's different. Julian and his best friend made their way past the frozen vampires to Balthazar. Julian felt strange looking at the man he'd thought had tried to kill them and, perhaps, his parents. But he felt no animosity towards him. His instincts, and maybe those really were Damon since he couldn't hear the Vampire King, were telling him that both Sophia and Christian were right. This man was not a threat, but was he an ally? Balthazar's gaze was lingering on Christian, who was just as clearly ignoring him. Something was going on there that Julian would find out about, but he finally looked over at Julian. He gave a smile that was reflected in his silver eyes. Julian felt almost at ease, but he reminded himself that this man was holding all these vampires in place. May I, Julian? He extended a hand towards Julian's right one, where the tattoo was now covered up with the jacket. I just want to see what the fuss is all about, Balthazar said and waggled his fingers. A teenage girl with short, dark hair who must have been the Ridley that Balthazar had mentioned before drifted over. Arceus, too, was suddenly right there. All of them were staring at Julian's covered wrist. Julian tugged it closer to his body. Christian was suddenly standing in front of him.
He's not an exhibit.
Christian growled, and he actually showed a little fang. Seeing Christian so defensive of him, had Julian stepping forward and pushing his jacket up to reveal the tattoo, which looked a dark purple now.
Here,
Julian said. Balthazar's reaction was interesting. He touched the tattoo lightly with his thumb, then drew back as if it burned him. It doesn't mean anything, Arceus, Balthazar growled to the confessor, who had said nothing. Julian glanced at Arceus. He, too, was staring at the tattoo, clutching this elaborate gold and ruby necklace around his neck.
It means everything,
Arceus whispered. Ridley blinked and looked between the two other vampires.
Is that... When he says Damon, does he mean King Damon?
Julian cut in.
Damon's real. If you just wait long enough, he'll be coming to Earth to prove it to you.
He will be coming here?
Arceus looked starstruck.
Yes.
Why isn't he here now? Why would he leave you alone? You're barely a day old and you're starving. Balthazar sounded outraged.
It's not his fault. He woke up after not being fed for too long. He doesn't have the strength to come here yet, but he will.
Yet he sent you here alone.
Because of Christian. Christian would have died if I hadn't left Night Vallen.
Julian cried out, and Christian stroked his back.
I'm all right.
Christian murmured. Julian nodded. He was so tired. He wanted to lay down and not get up for a while.
He's no well.
I'm just a little tired. Or maybe I'm finally dying from Damon's blood.
Balthazar put a hand against Julian's forehead as if checking for a fever. You're hungry. You haven't fed. You need to get out of here.
Balthazar was going to say your master, but Damon's not here. And the Vampire King doesn't seem to want me in Nightvallen. He's not asked me to come back.
Julian tried not to feel depressed about this. Now that he'd seen Christian was safe, his own situation loomed large ahead of him.
Everything will be okay, Julian. Balthazar will make sure that you're safe.
Christian said with such certainty that Julian wondered if he had Sophia's gift of seeing the future. But the moment that Christian said it, Balthazar was agreeing with him, and Julian wondered if there was a method to this madness.
Once word gets out about what you did here tonight, I'm sure that no one will bother me again,
Julian said. Balthazar and Arceus's gaze met. The vampire lord explained, No one will know about tonight outside of our household, Julian. They won't remember you coming here. They won't remember the tattoo. They won't remember a thing. Julian frowned.
But,
Julian, trust me. Balthazar's silver eyes glittered. This is best. You and Christian need to be ghosts. That's the only way I can keep you safe. Join us next time for episode 13, The Boss.
Many people have asked us if there are ebooks of the Everdark series. Yes, now there are ebooks, as well as Everdark merch. Ebooks are available in PDF, EPUB, and Mobi from our own merch shop. Just follow the link in the notes to the Everdark series to read on your phone or any device. And check out the t-shirts, mugs, art prints, and pop sockets while you're at it. Your support really matters to us as small creators, and any purchases go directly to supporting the creation of more stories, just like Everdark and Dragon's Reign. Thanks, you guys.
The Everdark podcast by Ex Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.